In the light of a potential Fable 4 being announced this year, since we pretty much know that Microsoft is working on one and it appears to be being developed by Playground Games, I thought what better time to take a look back at the history of the Fable franchise, one of my favourite game series of all time. So strap yourselves in, folks, because here we go.
Let's go make our wish, little sparrow. I wish.
And so our story begins.
When we first sat down and thought about Fable, we thought we wanted to make a role-playing game.
Beyond these broken doors lies the Heroes Guild. But the heroes are not all gone. You are here. And that same heroic blood flows through you.
You're heroes, but you're not any of the three. One of you is the fourth.
Teach me to be a hero.
Yeah, I mean, Fable 3, it's all about power.
I am giving you power over life and death.
Death is not your destiny today, Sparrow.
Jack of Blades is back. The history of Albion is a history of heroes.
Back in around 2000, the development of the first Fable game began. It was set to be an RPG like no other, throwing away the conventions of contemporary RPGs and creating something truly unique. It was developed by Lionhead, later to become a subsidiary of Microsoft, and headed up by no other than Peter Molyneux, the man we hate to love. It was said, quote, "The world would be a breathtakingly beautiful place filled with waterfalls, mountains, dense forests, populated with compelling and convincing characters with real personality, people who actually reacted to you. We wanted to give the player control of a hero who would adapt to the way they played, who would age, who would become battle-scarred, who would get tattoos, wear dreadlocks, and a dress if the player was so inclined. We wanted each and every person who played our game to have a unique experience, to have their own stories to tell, and we called it Thingy." Molyneux even said at one point, "It's going to be the greatest game ever." Early on in development, before it was named Fable, it was called Project Ego. Project Ego didn't have too many blips during the development, it went relatively smoothly. It was the marketing that was the issue. Peter Molyneux is the man who promises 1,000 things, but unlike our run-in with the recent Sean Murray in his game No Man's Light, No Man's Sky. I don't know what came up. Unlike Sean Murray, Peter still delivers on great RPG experiences with the Fable games. Yes, he lied about the acorn, and I'm still upset. I want my fucking acorn, and I want it to become a tree. But regardless, he still delivers fantastic games. Fable 1 was released in September of 2004, and despite Molyneux's empty promises, the game was critically acclaimed and was the most selling game of the month it was released. Players loved the new take on the RPG genre with the witty humour, British charm, and the fun and intuitive combat system, which was comprised of 3 main elements: melee with swords, axes, maces, and the like, ranged weapons such as crossbows and bow and arrows, and magic, which had a huge assortment of spells to suit your playstyle, from offensive fire and lightning to defensive shields and healing magic and everything in between. The leveling system was slightly different to most RPGs. By killing enemies, they dropped XP orbs which you can collect, and these are then used to level up individual skills, whether that be strength, skill, or magic. These will then level up and give you higher stats to your different abilities. For example, upgrading toughness means you gain more health, whereas upgrading your speed means you swing your sword faster. A strong combination of these allows for some devastating battles. The main focus of Fable was to make it so the player changed in appearance depending on his or her playstyle. On top of this, there was a reputation system in terms of the NPCs. If you were good, then the NPCs would love you and cheer your name. If you were evil, they'd cower in fear at your might. And this was something the players got behind, as there were always benefits to choosing to be good or evil. Depending on how you interacted with certain NPCs, you could become friends and perhaps end up marrying someone and then living with them, which was a very nice feature, adding that sense of universe and NPCs existing outside of just supplying you with missions to complete and things to kill. Depending on how you treat the person you marry, you can even end up engaging in sexual activities with them. However, no children can be born, even though Molyneux did say this would be a feature. In terms of the morality system, for example, in a quest, perhaps an easier option is to kill someone for their money and be done with it, whereas if you take the time to help this person, you may be rewarded with a powerful weapon, and that choice is in the hands of the player. The story, although simple, is very compelling, following a young boy whose village is burned down and his family thought to be killed. He joins a guild of heroes and discovers there was more to his bloodline than he thought, thrusting you into this world of Albion to explore, conquer against enemies, find copious amounts of loot, and become a legendary hero, whether for heroic reasons or for your lust of power. There was plenty to do and find, and a lot of interesting side quests with interesting characters that makes this world feel alive, and all of this still lives up to the standards of 2018, even if it is a little dated. The soundtrack of Fable 1, all but the main theme, was composed by Russell Shaw, who's worked on other Molyneux titles such as Black and White. The main theme, however, was composed by Danny Elfman, an incredibly successful composer who's written music for the likes of Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy, The Nightmare Before Christmas, and the new Justice League movie. Molyneux wanted this soundtrack to feel authentic, and so it was fully recorded via an orchestra. Fable ended up being loved by fans, and they were desperate for more, which caught the eye of Microsoft. In September of 2005, an expansion of sorts was released for Fable, and this was before the time of DLC, so it was more of a re-release of the game, similar to the final mixes of Kingdom Hearts. It contained all of the content of Fable, however included new monsters, weapons, alignment-based spells, items, armor, towns, buildings, and expressions, as well as the ability to give children objects. The game also received 9 new areas and 16 new quests, as well as Briar Rose and Scythe receiving more screen time, plus the ability to uncover the mystery behind Lady Grey. This release people liked as they got more of what they loved, and newcomers could now jump on board if they had been on the fence in 2004. But all wasn't well over at Lionhead. Lionhead was going through some financial difficulties, and Microsoft thought it was time to make their move and acquire Lionhead. Ubisoft was also a contender for buying Lionhead, but Molyneux in the end decided it was best to go with Microsoft. Thank God. Honestly, I feel if Ubisoft got their hands on Lionhead, we'd have Fable 15 coming out this year with an overwhelming abundance of microtransactions and a story written by an offended millennial who says things like, "Wow, that's so totally rad, and I love to play epic video games because they rock." Sorry, Ubisoft just cut me deep. With Lionhead now able to delve into Microsoft's vaults of cash, the sequel to Fable was looking up. E3 of 2006 rolls around, and during the Microsoft press show, Lionhead Studios shows off a trailer for the sequel to Fable. It's purely CGI and serves simply to announce the game and show that it is in development and to get people excited. This was met with a great response, with the fans of the original game buzzing that there was going to be a sequel. Fable 2 seek to take everything that worked in Fable 1 and improve on it. Everything that didn't work, they did away with. It was also a go for Molyneux to include things that they wanted to include in the first game that they either didn't have time to do, or were limited to with the original Xbox. And yes, that includes the infamous acorn. Molyneux even poked fun at himself within Fable 2 by having the characters talk about a sacred acorn and a tree, which played a role in one of the major quests.
Nourishing the golden acorn is done with holy water from the wellspring of light.
Although this didn't at all function like Molyneux had promised back in the lead up to Fable 1, although I think by this point most fans and Molyneux himself knew that that gameplay element was not possible and was never going to happen, so it was a nice gag to add to the Fable universe. And this is something that Fable took to the next level this time around. The game knew what it was and what it wanted to be, and this would shape the Fable franchise for the next decade. Fable 2 was released for the Xbox 360 in October of 2008. There were reports of a PC version being made, however Molyneux has since commented saying that they got caught up in future projects and had to move on, and sadly Fable 2 is yet to come to PC. Fingers crossed for a HD remake maybe, along with Fable 3 to prepare us for Fable 4, just a little wish of mine. Anyways, Danny Elfman and Russell Shaw returned for the soundtrack, which again just shaped this game and solidified what Fable was. Fable 2 takes place 500 years after the events of Fable 1 in a colonial-style Albion resembling somewhat the Age of Enlightenment just prior to industrial England. This for players was a big change from what they'd known in Fable 1, however the environments weren't all that different, there were clear changes, but it still felt like a Fable game at its roots. The story this time around had you start off as a homeless child. You could this time choose if you wanted to be male or female, and this added a nice sense of personalization to the game. Your character lived on the streets of a place known as Bowerstone Old Town with their sister Rose. They dreamt of living in a castle like the one King Lucian lived in. After discovering a mystical music box under the guidance of Teresa, a blind seer with connections to the heroes of the Old Kingdom, they are swept up into an adventure in which the player's sister is brutally murdered and sets the player out to uncover their lineage of heroes and take their vengeance upon the man who murdered their sister. This adventure takes you across Albion from new places to old places, exploring how Albion has changed in the 500 years between the first game and the second game. Fable 2 changed a lot of things for the better. First of all, adding the ability to choose your expressions from a wheel, you can now access by pressing the right bumper down and then choose from various expressions, which cause the NPCs to hold different opinions of you, similar to Fable 1. In terms of combat, everything was streamlined, although still followed a similar system of melee, ranged, and magic, with range now introducing guns due to the time period. Magic, however, has far less spells you can use, which is a downside, but not a huge issue, as they removed plenty of spells that were fairly useless, although it is a shame there wasn't quite as much variation. The leveling system works pretty much the same as the original Fable. When you kill an enemy, you can collect XP orbs, which you can put into various skills to power up your strength, skill, and magic. In the sequel, tracking quests was made easier, allowing the player to track a quest whether it be a main quest or a side quest, and follow a trail of glowing sparkles to reach their quest of their choice. The first game had you check your map for the quest location and then figure out where it was and how to get there. There was simply no quest tracking in the first game. Families were now improved, allowing you to still get married and live with your spouse, but you can now choose to have kids and grow your family, which was something no other RPG game had really done. Notice before I said you can choose to have kids. In this game they added condoms, meaning you can actually choose to have protected or unprotected sex, meaning you can actually avoid having children if you just feel like listening to video game characters make hilarious sexual conversation. This game also added jobs, so you could earn money by doing things such as blacksmithing or chopping wood, since you don't earn money from quests in this game. When taking part in these jobs across Albion, you earn money for the longer you can keep the minigame going and keep your chain up. The more you do a job, the more you level up that job's skill, which allows you to earn more and more money. Speaking of money, this game went all out with its economy system, which would become a staple of the Fable franchise, by allowing players to purchase any building they see. If it's a house, you can move in and live there, customize the furniture to your liking. If you don't want to move in, you can rent the house to earn some cash. Along with that, you can buy shops and gain profit from the sales made, which is a great way of making money and is incredibly fun too. Something else added was pub games, which was available for 800 Microsoft points at the time, which allowed for playing of various different games all over Albion in the various pubs to wager cash and have a good time. As for the other DLC, Fable 2 saw the Knothole Glade DLC in January of 2009, available for 800 Microsoft points, which sends you to a new area for a few new quests. Then in May of 2009, we got the See the Future pack, which gave some new quests revolving around Murgo the Trader for 560 Microsoft points. Overall, Fable 2 is commonly held as the fan favourite Fable game, and it was at the time. Critics and fans loved it. Fable 2 was a critical success, selling over 3.5 million copies within the first year or so, and accumulating plenty of awards in the process. Lionhead had done it, they'd made a name for themselves, and Fable was a huge success under the belt of Microsoft. And of course, they wanted more, and they wanted it quickly. Where the development cycle from Fable 1 to Fable 2 was 4 years, for Fable 3, they only had around 2 years. Microsoft knew Fable was one of their most successful exclusives, along with things like Halo and Gears of War. They wanted to compete with the likes of Uncharted and God of War from PlayStation and Assassin's Creed from Ubisoft. With them releasing games so frequently, they wanted to keep Fable relevant. With the deadline of Fable 3 being the end of 2010, Lionhead had quite the challenge ahead of them. However, this time they weren't jumping hardware like with the first 2 Fable games. Fable 3 was announced at Gamescom 2009 in August, with a simple CGI trailer working as a teaser to get it out there that Fable 3 is coming. During the marketing for this game is really where Molyneux got out of hand with his claims. I personally believe he wanted to include many of the things he mentions in the game, but pressure from Microsoft to meet the deadline meant many things had to be cut from the final game. He really bigged up this sense that Fable 3 feels very different to what Fable has done before. They aren't going for the same structure of starting weak and then slowly becoming powerful to take out a big bad guy, and that defeating the villain was merely the halfway point. This, along with many other claims you can find on YouTube under Peter Molyneux Lies, left fans incredibly disappointed when the game launched. Fable 3 to many fans was said to be Fable 2 with a new lick of paint, a few changes for the worse, and very, very bare bones of what a Fable game should be. I have to say, as someone who played Fable 3 in 2010 and it being my first Fable game, I don't have the same connection since it was my first experience of Fable and I'll always love it. That being said, after playing Fable 1 and 2, I entirely do understand where the hate comes from. Fable 3 feels like a very stripped back Fable experience, although it'll always have a special place in my heart personally. I believe as time has gone by, people's wounds have healed and there is more of a love for Fable 3 for what it is rather than pure cold hatred. Fable 3 is set around 50 years after the events of Fable 2. The ruler of Albion has died and the country has been left in control of King Logan, a tyrant. You, the prince, are Logan's brother, and after an awful turn of events, you're forced to leave your home in the castle to learn more about your heritage as a hero and find allies in order to rise up against Logan and take control of the country for the better. Fable 3 has the same humor as Fable 2, and clearly you can see they wanted to show that this is Fable's identity. A lot of what was in Fable 2 is in Fable 3, not a lot has changed in terms of gameplay, and the same 3 ability combat system was in place with melee, ranged, and magic. Magic, however, this time could be combined and weaved. Say you had lightning and fire spells, no longer did you have to choose just one, you could combine and dual wield magic, which was a nice feature. Another feature was your weapons changing the way they look depending on how you use them and the choices you made. Now, I don't know about you, but mine always ends up with a Balverine head on it, so I'd say this isn't even true. What really changed in Fable 3 was the skills. Instead of collecting XP from enemies, you collect guild seals from enemies, and also from completing quests, which also replaces the renown system from the previous games too, so your XP is your renown, however it's called your guild seals or followers. This is really confusing to write down, but hopefully you get what I'm saying. When collecting these seals after every poignant moment in the game, you're sent to the Road to Rule, where you're contacted by Teresa from the previous games, who guides you. On this Road to Rule, you're able to wander along the path and open chests which correspond with skills. This system is a theme in Fable 3. There really are no pause menus, it's all done through gameplay, which as a design choice is absolutely fucking stupid. Sorry, allow me to just compose myself there. I do apologise. Speaking of this system, it's tied to the inventory too, so if you want to change weapons or outfits, you need to enter this sanctuary by pressing the pause button and walk into the outfit room or the weapon room to switch. It's tedious and long-winded. I get what they were trying to do, but it simply does not work for an RPG like Fable. One of the upsides to Fable 3 really are the characters. There are some returning characters from Fable 2, but the new ones are really fun. You have people like Walter, who you feel is a truly loyal friend, and people like Logan, who is a far more complex character than you first think, and it's really with the writing of these characters and the quests that Fable 3 really shines. I will say now that I feel Fable 3 has the most memorable and fun quests, whether it's partaking in a game of Dungeons and Dragons with hilarious commentary or dressing up as a chicken and returning chickens to their pens. Fable 3 really has a nice, variable, and memorable set of quests. A huge part of Fable 3, which led to it being hated by critics and fans, was the ending section. Like Molyneux said, defeating Logan wasn't the ending, although it certainly wasn't halfway. Once you defeat Logan, you become king and have to stop the impending darkness which you discover during the game. Now, to do so, you need to acquire enough money in the treasury. Along the course of the game, you make promises to different towns to help them when you become king. When you are king, you get these choices. Do you help these people, keep your promises and lose money but be known as a saint? Or do you break your promises to get enough money to save the people and end up evil just like your brother? This was an issue to many people, as you need to gather something like 6.5 million gold, and being evil makes that easy, whereas if you're good, you have to pay out millions of gold, meaning you need to make sure from the moment you boot up Fable 3, you're making money and investing in properties, so at the end you have enough money, which makes the good ending a grind, and it felt incredibly unbalanced. Overall, Fable 3 was well received. Fans were disappointed, critics found it fun, and the mainstream did too. Fable 3 was certainly not better than its predecessors, but it wasn't received too badly, and Microsoft were confident they could keep it going to support the release of their newest project, Project Natal, later to be known as the train wreck that was Connect. Not my words, Molyneux actually said that.
You know, Connect, I'll be honest, it was a disaster. It was a disaster, Ryan. It was a train wreck. Yet, for some reason, Fable The Journey was still released. Oh, by the way, before we get into that, Fable Heroes was released, and that was an arcade game where you smash enemies as little dolls of Fable characters in a 4-player co-op hack and slash. It's fine, it's not terrible, but also, like, who cares? This isn't anything. It's kind of cool, I guess. I don't know, never played it. Anyways, Microsoft needed a way to promote their newest endeavor, the Kinect, which allowed for full motion tracking of the player, so long as they have a mansion in order to play it, because I owned one and this did not work. It was a mess. It couldn't track for shit, which is why it was discontinued and they never talk about it anymore. It's safe to say Fable The Journey was the last nail in the coffin for Fable. After Fable 3 wasn't received well, there wasn't a huge desire for another Fable game among mainstream gamers, and after this monstrosity was released, that was really it. The whole game had a vague story of Gabriel, who is a dweller, and is separated from his village. He meets Teresa, weakened and fleeing from a corruption. Gabriel teams up with her, discovering magic gauntlets from the last hero queen, and uses them to battle enemies in order to help Teresa. You as the player control these gauntlets by using your arms in conjunction with hand gestures to use spells. The aiming is incredibly off, the recognition is awful and barely works, and this makes the game super difficult to even play. Not to mention that even were this game playable with a controller, it would still be totally atrocious. It plays somewhat like one of those on-rail arcade shooters from the early 2000s and went down as a total failure, and was one of the few games on the Kinect which gave the hardware a bad name. The highlight of this game was with the writing. A review from Destructoid said, quote, "Altogether, it's evident that Lionhead worked hard on this latest Fable adventure. That does not mean, however, that it's good. Far from it. As much as Lionhead may have tried its level best, the limitations of the Kinect ensure at every step that the journey is boring when it works and tear-inducing when it doesn't."
It seemed that was it for Fable. Most critics said the franchise was dead and it was never again to see a game in the franchise due to the bad handling from Microsoft, not giving enough development time for Fable 3 and then trying to push it onto the Kinect. That was until 2013, with the announcement of Fable Legends as the first Fable game on the current generation of Xbox, being the Xbox One. Before we talk about Legends, in 2014, for the 10-year anniversary of Fable, Lionhead developed and launched Fable Anniversary, which was a full HD remake of Fable 1, which runs on the Unreal Engine 3. It brought Fable 3 from 2004 into 2014 in style, and honestly, it's one of the best remakes or remasters of a game I've played. With things like the Ezio Collection in gaming, Fable Anniversary is a breath of fresh air, and you can see they really tried to properly update this game, and I think it paid off. It was received and appreciated by fans, and that was a nice gift for the 10-year anniversary. Development, however, continued on the next installment in the Fable franchise, being Fable Legends. Development started in summer of 2012, and it was announced in August of 2013 with a CGI trailer showing the return of Fable after the disaster that was Fable The Journey. However, it seemed they didn't want to return to the Fable we knew, however, try their hand at taking Fable online. Fable Legends was based around 4 different heroes that you'd play as a cooperative, and a villain who you'd play against, and these were all played by players online. The villain would place enemies and use traps to try and beat the heroes, and the 4 heroes would use co-op tactics and special abilities based on the hero they chose to beat the villain. It was meant to be competitive and cooperative at the same time and have a 5 to 10 year cycle, which added new content and additions to keep the game alive, and I suppose compete with other online games at the time with constant additions such as GTA Online and Destiny. The game took place hundreds of years before Fable, in a time of magic and folklore never properly delved into in Fable canon before. Technology hasn't been developed, and most citizens gather in small towns too scared to venture into the outside world. There are plenty of heroes around, however there is no guild yet, and heroes must rely on each other to fight the darkness. The game was taken to with mixed thoughts, but people were willing to give it a try. I actually got a chance to play the closed beta in 2014, and I have to say it felt like Fable in terms of gameplay and visuals. I really enjoyed that side to it. As a game though, it was complete balls and I would never play that, but it certainly had the tone of Fable down for a next generation of consoles. However, nobody would ever get to decide for themselves whether this game was good or not, because Microsoft confirmed on March 7th, 2016, the game was cancelled along with the closing down of Lionhead Studios. On this day, the gaming industry saw the loss of a great development team in Lionhead, and they are still sorely missed by many in the gaming community, and remembered fondly as the team that brought us the magnificent, unforgettable, unique and quirky experience that is Fable. Most people saw this as the definitive end of the Fable franchise, but recently, at the beginning of 2018, this seems to no longer be the case. A former Lionhead employee tweeted saying, quote, "Okay, having no inside information, I totally know who's building Fable 4 now. Interesting choice." This tweet was deleted soon after. This led plenty of fans to speculate, wait, is there a Fable 4? Adding to this, Playground Games, the developers behind Forza Horizon, recently had a job listing stating you'll join the team and the project at an early stage, giving you the rare opportunity to shape the future of an exciting, large-scale, open-world action RPG AAA title from the outset. It is to be noted that this originally stated it'd be a new IP, but was changed, which led a lot of people to think that it would now be an already established IP, and with Microsoft trying to compete with Sony exclusives, along with the growing action RPG genre of games such as Horizon Zero Dawn, Assassin's Creed Origins, and The Witcher 3, what better way to do that than with a brand new Fable game fitting this description? Nothing is confirmed as of yet, but I do believe that this could be the case, and myself and plenty of other fans are hugely hopeful. This E3 could see the announcement of a new Fable game which goes back to its roots while updating it to current games, which would honestly be a dream come true. With 8 years since the last proper release of a Fable game, a new Fable would honestly be a treat, as it's one of my favourite franchises of all time. From humble beginnings to an abrupt and sad departure from the industry, Lionhead will always be remembered as a marvel of the industry, and things really would not be the same in a world without Fable, and their legacy may well live on in a future game developed by a new studio. As sad as it is to see a franchise like Fable change hands, as long as they can capture what made that world unique and put the same passion and love into it as Lionhead did, I'll be a happy fan, and I'm sure plenty of others will be too. Thank you all so much for joining me for this look back at Fable. I really hope you enjoyed. I've been working on this video for close to a month now, and it's just something I really wanted to put together, so a like or a share would be greatly appreciated, and subscribe if you want to see more videos similar to this. Let me know your thoughts on Fable or a potential Fable 4 and this video in the comments below. Thanks again for joining me, guys, and I'll see you all next time.